We love being able to go to the different high school, colleges, middle schools to live broadcast sporting events around the area. Georgia Alabama Sports Live appreciates all the fan support, but without a presenting sponsor like Glenn Smith Chevrolet and GMC and Opelika, none of this would be possible. So we want to say thank you so much. Go to glennsmith.com. That is right, glennsmith.com. See all the inventory and see why people always say, you're ready to smile. Thanks, everyone, and thank you to Glenn Smith Chevrolet and GMC for being our presenting sponsor.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Georgia Alabama Sports Live Show. I'm Barringer alongside my partner in crime, Rich Holdridge. Rich, how are you, man?
Thrift, I am doing great. Glad to be back here doing another show. A lot of sports to talk about.
Yeah, I got a ton of topics we're going to be hitting on today, and it's a good night because there's no NBA, no big-time games going on, so we thought we'd get your attention. As we are this is going to be the only show we do this week. Heading out of town. Richard, you are too. So we'll be out of town the next few days, recuperating, getting that R&R, the relax and rest, and getting ready to rock and roll, which should be a fantastic summer leading into what I'm excited for. I know you are too, Richard, the 2024 fall football season. I mean, it's literally right around the corner. Can you believe that?
Yeah, it's less than 3 months away. I mean, it really kicks off in the state of Georgia on August the 14th for the Corky Kell Classic, as we got LaGrange playing in it. But I was actually looking at the schedule, Thrift, and really, I can't wait till we actually do our high school football preview show because, you know, breaking down from week 1 all the way to November and the start of the playoffs, there's a lot of intriguing games. And in fact, the week 2, I just want to give you an example, Thrift. Week 2, we've got the Heritage Bowl, Carver and Spencer. We've got Valley and Glenwood. Glenwood making its AHSAA debut. And I mean, and we also have like Russell County taking on Eufaula. I mean, it's just incredible. Troup County taking on Harris County. And Calvary Christian, they're on the road taking on Stratford Academy, making their GIAA debut. It's just going to be so great. I can't wait. I've actually been breaking down the schedule. I've been going through some of the teams, and I can't wait until we do that first preview show.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun for sure, but we still got summer to get through, and some of the things that we're going to be hitting on this summer, including state of the program, sitting down with athletic directors from each of the schools that we cover. We're looking forward to that. We started that last year, Richard. I thought it gave us a lot of traction. A lot of people viewed it. And they enjoyed watching it and hearing from their favorite athletic directors talking about each one of their athletic programs within that school. So we'll do that again this year. We're also going to hit on individual coaches. So 1 week could be Spencer, and we could do an interview with Joe Kegler, the AD, obviously, do a sit down with him. And then we can also talk to him about football team. We can talk to the baseball coach, Coach Quintavious Allen, Coach Tinch of the basketball programs. So looking forward to hitting some individual coaches as well as we continue moving forward. And we're also going to spend a week previewing some of these schools for sure. But we really won't dive into much of the preview for the football season until, I would say, second week of August. Those 2 weeks, I mean, Richard, we're probably going to be doing 2 or 3 shows a week, just ripping them out, talking about all the different teams, what we expect, because we also have Media Day we're going to do, and that's a good preview. So after Media Day, we'll get a good idea after a summer of workouts what each of the schools expect. But we look forward to doing state of the program, sitting down with the different athletic directors, talking to the individual coaches. That's going to be some of the slate that we hit this summer on Georgia Alabama Sports Live. We also plan on doing some summer league basketball games, some 7-on-7 football, and even some baseball too, Richard. So we're going to be busy. We're not going to be at every event. Trust me, there's so many summer league basketball games, a ton of baseball events going on, and, of course, 7-on-7 football. But we're going to try to hit a couple this summer for us just to, not get rusty and go 3 months without doing a live stream or a live broadcast. So looking forward to what our summer's going to entail. And we'll start that in June next week. We'll be hitting some different topics and different coaches around the area, as I made mention. And as the summer progresses, we'll start doing state of the program with the athletic directors. I want to give them some time to really, because some people are still hiring. You still got new coaches trying to find out their teams. So I want to give the coaches and the ADs and the program some time, at least this summer, to figure out themselves a little bit before we actually start asking them questions. But Richard, this year in 2023-2024, for all the schools we covered, Glenwood, Smith Station, Russell County, Central, all 8 Muskogee County schools, Harris County, Brookstone, Pacelli, and Calvary, I was blown away at how competitive, and not only competitive, Richard, we had multiple teams make the state championship game, make deep playoff runs, or win the state championship. We just had 3 in baseball. We had 2 girls and a 1 boys team in basketball, and of course the Central Red Devils in football, but had Calvary and Glenwood and Brookstone all make the state championship game. It was a great year, and I'm expecting it to even be a better year. So I don't know how they're going to top it, Richard, but I feel like they are. But man, the greatness that we have in high school sports around this area should not be taken for granted. I'm glad that we were able to get it on Georgia Alabama Sports Live.
It truly has been a very successful year one in Alabama Sports Live, and I'm glad that I was able to be a part of it with you, Thrift, as I love calling games, and I just continue to transition from when I was calling games for the Rapids, and then it transitioned to the line games for Beam, and it led to helping you out with the Muskogee County Christmas Tournament back in 2022, and we were doing it off your phone, and I knew that you had a vision, and this vision turned into Georgia Alabama Sports Live, and it's really been a huge success. I never thought that we would be live streaming as many games as we did. I mean, I know for football, because there's a high demand for football, there's a big fan base, a lot of people want to live stream football, but we took it to another level because we were live streaming basketball and even baseball, and nobody in this area is doing what we're doing. So it was a huge success.
Yeah, well, also too, Richard, the teams are really good. So as much as we want to give ourselves a pat on the back, and I was proud of what we accomplished. And by the way, either Sunday or Monday, we haven't decided yet, but I'm thinking it's going to be Sunday. Make sure to tune in, and we're going to be doing basically a 1-year anniversary show. We were going to do it today, but we couldn't get the guests that we wanted to get on, and we want to get on several people that we feel like were integral part in what we accomplished this year, Richard. So we're going to have them on, plan on doing it Sunday night. It's our 1-year anniversary Georgia Alabama Sports Live show. Again, we'll give all the stats, how many games we did. I know it's in the hundreds of thousands of views. I mean, it really is. It is mind-boggling that the amount of coverage that we were able to do and the amount of games that we were able to cover and live stream, and then even getting state championship series. That in itself, as you made mention, we knew football was going to get traction, but basketball and baseball, I thought, were just as popular. And a lot of credit goes to how many great teams were in this area, Richard. It's not hard to get hype when we're doing a Central Russell County game. Both teams won their region. Both teams made it to the playoffs. One team made it to the Final Four. Or any Pacelli game, they made it all the way to the state championship. Glenwood making it to the Final Four, their girls team. I mean, when you got great teams, that's just in basketball. Baseball, Glenwood baseball, Calvary baseball, Brookstone baseball, all won state championships. Central made it to the state championship series and had an historic season. Harris County, Columbus, all were high in their own region and got to host playoff games. I mean, it was. I'm almost at a loss for words, but it was everything I envisioned what would be a best case scenario, and it actually happened. Very rare does that usually the case, Richard, during a first year venture of a business. But when you have great teams, you have great coaches, athletic directors, fans who support what we do, it made worthwhile to do 70 baseball games and 80 basketball games and 30 football games and literally not having a break going from basketball to baseball. We had our end of the year kind of party, me, you, Toygar, and Chris. And I made mention, it's like we didn't even have a break. We went straight from doing all those basketball games, the state championship broadcast for GIAA, straight into baseball. So this is really the first week where we don't have anything going on in terms of live streaming games. I mean, we even live streamed the Lions last Saturday. Me and you were on the call for that. We're going to talk about that game later on today. But I just wanted to start the show off saying thank you again. I cannot say it enough to all the viewers, the fans, the athletic directors, the players, coaches for allowing us to be a part of what was a magical year. And we expect big things coming up for the 2024-2025 year. I made mention about the Lions. We'll go ahead and talk about that first, Richard. 82-0. That was the final score against the Harrisburg Stampede. But let me set the table. What I was not told and what we figured out the day of the game is that Harrisburg Stampede's original roster, Richard, in which the previous two times, remember the Lions won at home by like 50, and then they went on the road to Harrisburg and only won by 8. It was probably the closest game in the last 2 years for any of the Lions' opponents, which I thought was an impressive feat for Harrisburg. Well, they got knocked out the playoffs, and they decided they did not want to make that drive from Pennsylvania all the way to Georgia. So they got a semi-pro team out of North Georgia to wear their jerseys and play against the Lions because they didn't want to get fined because you have to play that game. Season tickets have already been sold. I mean, you saw the crowd. I mean, it was packed. So they had to have a game. I'm very disappointed in what Harrisburg did and it's no offense to the semi-pro team, but Richard, that's like taking Columbus State, intramural football team, club football team, which has got a lot of great players. Coach Mike and his team, that's where Coach Brunson came from. They've made championships. They've won national championships. They're excellent. They're one of the top club football programs in the country. But would you give them a chance against Alabama? No, you wouldn't. It would be 90-0. That's what happened here. I think they could have put triple digits up, Richard. I will say the semi-pro team had heart. They were still competing. They didn't really get defeated, even though it was 82-0. But I hope Harrisburg, it's just sad. Lack of heart on their part for not sending players and sending their team down here. And if the AIF needs to do a better job than this, Richard. And this is where I said on the broadcast, and then I'll let you, I know I'm going long, but this is where on the broadcast, Richard, I made mention that for future of the Lions, for the future of the Lions, I hope they are in a league, and it could be the AIF, and I hope it is. They're in a league that has teams that are similar to them and the support they get from the community and within their own organization, because I don't see it right now. I think it's the Lions and everybody else. I know the Lions and most people that cheer for the Columbus Lions would like to see some competitive games. Obviously, they want Damian Daniels, the Nighthawk, and the Columbus Lions to win every game they play. But 82-0, I mean, the game wasn't even close. It never crossed my mind, not one point in that game, did I even think Harrisburg would even keep it within 20 or 30, let alone have a chance to win. Richard?
From start to finish, it was complete dominance by the Columbus Lions, and we actually saw that there was something off. Looking at this roster and most of the players from Georgia.
The roster you had, Richard, originally from the AIF website, we look at that roster and then we're like,
different roster. It was a different roster, but it's
not the same players.
But they actually abide by the rules. They signed all these players to the Harrisburg Stampede. They got contracts. They probably didn't even go to Harrisburg, but they played this game. It kind of reminded me, I hate to use this comparison, but Bishop Sycamore when they played IMG Academy, It started getting dangerous when players were getting injured, and we saw that right out the gate when the quarterback got out. They had at least 5 quarterbacks in this game, and it just got ugly. I know we wanted to play this game because of the fans, and they bought the season tickets, but I'm excited about this. Not next week; they have a bye next week, but Military Night, June the 8th. They're taking on the Peach State Cats. Now, this is a team that's not in the AIF. But this is a team that was talking some smack last year, saying that they were going to beat the Lions last year. So I think that the Columbus Lions have got something to prove. I know that Peach State is looking to prove in their new league, and they're trying to get their program going. They're out of Swanee, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, you're saying the right things, Richard. But last time they played last year, when Peach State talked a lot of crap, it was an absolute bloodbath murder. The police needed to be called. If it would have been a fight, that would have been an assault, and they would have called the police on every one of the Lions and sent them to jail. That's how bad of a beatdown they put on Peach State. I think Peach State remembers that, and they would just want to keep it competitive. And it'll be a nice tune-up game, and I hope everyone comes out because it's still going to be, I think, maybe Peach State's got some better players. Who knows? It could be a totally different team from last year. But I'm hoping this is a tune-up for that championship game against Corpus Christi, who I think in the last 2 years has the best chance to keep it competitive. I don't think they're going to beat the Lions by no means. Never even crossed my mind. But maybe keep them competitive for at least a half, where maybe going in the second half, you're wondering, if the Lions don't play well, they make a couple of turnovers, Corpus Christi could win. Maybe they can get it to that point. But the Lions are just so talented. I mean, that defensive line, Jatavius Ponder, DeAndre Brown, Desmond Scott, Richard, he had almost 5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 2 fumble recoveries. The guy, interior defensive lineman. And then you got Brown on the outside. I mean, these guys are just big, physical, athletic, hard to block. And I'm not seeing one team stop DeAndre Brown. Coach Damian Daniels, when we talked to him on Saturday, he said he's the AIF Defensive Player of the Year. And I grantedly, I think so too. I think this team is just lights out. Kyle Griswold and that secondary. I mean, they have all 3 levels, Richard. They got elite guys on that defense. I know the offense gets a lot of credit, and we'll talk about Marcus Brooks here in a moment. But that defense is one of the best arena football defenses I've seen in a long time. That's what I'm saying. I think this team can compete in any league in arena football right now. You put them in there, they're going to be one of the top teams. That's how talented this roster is. And I'm hoping the AIF or whatever happens with the Lions, they're going to be in a league with more competitive teams to show how great this team is. Because 82-0, you're talking more about how bad the other team is instead of how great the Lions are. And that is upsetting because I think this is one of the most talented arena football teams I've ever seen. Now, I haven't covered it as long as you have, Richard. I haven't kept up with it as long as you have, but this team has a elite player at every single position. Offensive line doesn't give up sacks. Brooks is great, but it's the defense too. They don't just give up points. They get a lot of sacks. They force turnovers, and that's why you see 82-0.
The Lions are still going to be the Lions regardless of what league they're in. They left the NAL in 2022. They joined the AIFA last season, which was a traveling league for all the teams. They didn't even have a road game last season. I thought they were going to be in a little bit more competitive league. I mean, we had some teams that, they went on the road. They've only played 2 teams so far, the Amarillo Venom and the Harrisburg Stampede. The Flint River.
Close games, Richard.
Yep. They were close games on the road. But they had some other teams that, and hopefully when this league does build, or if the Lions choose to go to another league, there were teams that just couldn't field a team. The Flint River Gators ended up folding before the season even started. The Mississippi Raiders, the team that they played in the AIFA championship last year, they ended up leaving the league. So we'll see how they do against Corpus Christi in the de facto championship. Hopefully it'll be competitive, but we want to see the Lions not just win, but we want it to be competitive. I think that I don't know if fans are just satisfied with going to a game and they end up winning 82-0. I mean, we witnessed this game. I mean, that team they were playing didn't even move the ball. I mean, they had Some good kickoff returns. That was really the only positive thing, but way too many turnovers. The center couldn't even snap the football, and the quarterback, which their carousel of quarterbacks, just couldn't even throw a pass when it was all said and done.
Richard, they had one first down, I think, towards the end of the game. They went 3.5 quarters without having a first down. I mean, come on, man. The backup quarterback for the Lions was the second best quarterback on the field. Think about that. The backup quarterback for the Lions, who came in and threw, 2 or 3 touchdowns, Pat Neely.
Tommy Neely, Tommy
Neely, not Pat Neely. Tommy Neely. He came in and threw 3 touchdowns, Richard. Or 2, at least 2. I think it was 3, but at least 2 touchdowns. He was better than anybody that was thrown out there for Harrisburg. And again, nothing – I'm not taking anything away from the semi-pro team that put on the Harrisburg jerseys, but like that's sad, man. It really is sad. I was impressed with Marcus Brooks. This guy, he's our guy, and man, he throws guys open. He is extremely knowledgeable of the game. He is an excellent leader. He's thrown 33 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. He's going to be the MVP of this league, as he should be. And I'm hoping he's going to be the quarterback for the Lions for the next 4 or 5 years. This guy is everything you need at that position, which I think is the most important position, probably arena football, is your quarterback. And if this is the way I'll compare it, if you like comparisons, he's Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady, and everyone else is backup quarterbacks, or I wouldn't even say starting. Maybe Corpus Christi's got a Daniel Jones. Maybe. But I mean, are you even putting Daniel Jones? He's not even you can't even say his name in the same breath as Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes, let alone have it in your brain. That's how far removed Daniel Jones is from Brady and Pat Mahomes. That's the same thing what's happened here with Marcus Brooks and everybody else. We love him, Richard. He's always a frequent guest on our show. He shares our stuff. He comes on Sports Visions. DJ talks about, DJ Jones. And by the way, listen to the Sports Visions radio show. We got a best stuff tomorrow. Myself and DJ, we're out of town. We'll be back in studio on Monday. Make sure to like us on Facebook, Sports Visions. Download the Sports Visions radio app and subscribe to our Sports Visions YouTube channel. DJ, he played at the highest level, Richard. This guy was a quarterback at Georgia and was an all-state in high school. He's been around a lot of great QBs. Remember, he was on the same team as John Elway. He says Marcus Brooks, one of the best quarterbacks he's seen. He is really impressed with this guy. And that comes that's, I think, a huge compliment from a guy like DJ Jones. So Marcus Brooks, Lions, I think they're on the way to another championship, Richard, back-to-back.
Yeah, and it would be the second championship in the city of Columbus in a while. And so the Columbus Lions have been a fan favorite since their inception back in 2006. I was really optimistic. I was hoping that the Lions would just continue this winning tradition, but there was a lot of unknowns when Coach Jason Gibson left in 2022 to become the head football coach of the Jacksonville Sharks. The first thing that came to mind when you thought of the Columbus Lions, you thought of Coach Gibson, because he has been the longest tenured coach. I mean, he's been the coach, the general manager. He's been everything for the Lions. He leaves in 2022, and there was some fans. I'm going to be honest with you, Thrift. There was fans that were wondering what's going to happen to the Lions. And then they changed their logo. They got a new era. Coach McKinney comes in, and the rest is history. They win a championship in the AIFA, and then Coach Daniels takes over, and he's been doing a phenomenal job.
Yeah, Richard, you got to make mention, too. Don't just sweep over that. I'm glad you brought it up. But the leadership of Richard Masala, Casey Smith, and, of course, the general manager, Lee Snow, they were able to get through deep waters, shark-infested waters, and able to come out of it the way we are right now. I think this team is in just as good a position as it was 3 years ago under Gibson, and that is credit to those 3 men, and we appreciate them. I also want to say, too, the wide receivers are unguardable. Ramon DeLoach, who is, I think, was the best option the Lions had in the first couple of games. Now it's Jermon Fortson. You add a Michael Swan, who, if you didn't see it, an ESPN-level catch, Richard, it going up with 2 hands the way he did. The guy is just a Sports Center top 10 play waiting to happen every time he's on the field. They got guys like Tramel Gooden. They are loaded with talent. And again, they did this 82-0 game without Deloach. So, like, come
Incredible.
on, Richard. I mean, it really is. So the Lions, you made mention, June 8th, military night, Peach State, come and pack out the house. And then me and Richard will be on the call for June 14th. It's a Friday night. Championship Friday. We got the Corpus Christi Tritons taking on the Columbus Lions for the championship. AIF. We're going to have all the pregame shows, everything leading up to those games. You're going to find it only one place, Richard, right here on Georgia Alabama Sports Live. We're going to take a break and show you why we're presented by Glenn Smith Chevrolet and GMC. And when we get back from the break, we got some hot topics around the sports world. The NCAA decided that they are allowing Power 5 schools to pay players. That's unbelievable. We'll talk about that. The Minnesota Timberwolves finally got a win. And Ronald Acuna Jr. I can't even finish his sentence. He's out for the season. We'll talk about that and more right here on Georgia Alabama Sports Live Show.
You're watching right now the Georgia Alabama Sports Live Show that is presented by Glenn Smith Chevrolet and GMC. Get ready to smile. We'll be right back after this.
Make your way to Glenn Smith Chevrolet. Choose America's #1 compact SUV, the Chevy Equinox. Discounted up to $6,500 off. Chevy's full-size pickup truck, the powerful Chevy Silverado, is up to $12,000 off. And big Chevy Silverado 2500 HDs are discounted up to $6,000 off. Plus, enjoy no payments until fall. Make your way to Glenn Smith Chevrolet in Opelika.
Get ready to smile.
I'm smiling right now. I know Richard is too, as we are back here on the Georgia Alabama Sports Live Show. All right, Richard, I talked about it. I'm getting a little bit of a feedback there, Richard. I talked about it. The NCAA, and I know we're going to hit on it extensively next week on Sports Visions when we do our Legally Sports, and we have on our resident legal expert, great lawyer, guy I respect immensely, Ben Finley. So we'll talk to him, and we'll get more in depth in that conversation. So make sure to tune in next week. But I just want to give initial thoughts. So NCAA is going to have to pay out more than $2.7 billion in damages over the 10 years to past and current athletes. So that means each school is going to be able to share up to $20 million of revenue from all the TV money they get per year with its athletes. But remember, that's not just for current athletes. That's for athletes in the past. Are going to have to compensate too. What they're hoping is going to happen, Richard, is that now that this is basically like a salary cap and there's no more NIL deals for $5-10 million, now you can set a cap on how much you can pay a player, a maximum, if you will. And this allows other schools an opportunity at a competitive playing field. Because right now they feel like if you're not a top dog like an Alabama, an Auburn, a USC, a Michigan, Ohio State, Clemson, a Florida State, if you don't have top NIL money, you're not going to compete with the 5, 10, 15 teams that can. This makes it where everybody in the Power 5 has that opportunity. I don't know if this is going to work out, but man, 15 years ago, this was an afterthought thinking that the schools can pay the players, and now they can. I mean, what word are we coming to right now? Never in a million years would I thought it'd get to this 10 years ago. Even 5 years ago. But NIL has changed the landscape of college football and college sports in general. And two, the $20 million goes to all athletes. It's not just football players. So there's no way you can say, hey, come sign a 3, because remember, college football players have to play at least 3 years before they go to the NFL or be in school for 3 years. You're not going to sign a contract 3 years worth $5 million each year and all up on one player. So that means that the money that they're getting now is going to lower substantially, I think, Richard. I don't know the ins and outs of the deal. I know that $2.7 billion is going to be paid out to all the Power 5 schools, and that means $20 million per school. So maybe this changes and allows that worry that everybody has. Josh Pate talks about all the time. where the college and basically retired Nick Saban and Mike Krzyzewski, maybe this will be that solution that all these coaches and athletic directors are talking about. I'm hoping it could be. I know it's just initial thoughts right now. Maybe this is the cap that they were talking about. So we'll see. What's your initial thoughts on it, Richard?
Well, the one sport that I hope that it changes is college basketball. I'm tired of seeing the one and dones going straight to the NBA. I miss the days of college basketball in the 80s and 90s where players stayed 3 and 4 years. I mean, Patrick Ewing stayed at Georgetown for 4 years. The thing is, if they're paying players and they're already getting NIL deals, we might start seeing college basketball back to its glory days. I really believe that. And that's what I would like to see because players are not going to be quick to go to the NBA. Remember, out of high school, I think Sebastian Telfair was the last player that was drafted from high school to the NBA. Then they did the one and done. But remember, they got to go to the Ignite League. So you've got players like Scoot Henderson and Jalen Green that went to the Ignite League, which nobody knows about. These games aren't even televised. They play them in Atlanta. I think that you get showcased in college. They pay you in college. And that's a possibility that these players might stay at least 2 years. I'm tired of seeing the one and done, and I'm tired of seeing these great players go to the Ignite League that nobody knows about just so they can get a paycheck.
Yeah. I'm with you, and hopefully that you're saying that this means they have to sign contracts and they have to stay or play at least 2 years. I'm hoping, because if that's the case,
that's what I'm hoping.
You can see more competitive teams, and you can see teams like you made mention, and better basketball in general. I mean, now you're having got continuity, experience, learning offense, and now they're going to be more developed and prepared for the NBA. And it makes the college basketball product 100% better. So I'm with you on that. It's funny. It took NIL and it took a court to tell ADs and administrators and the people that lead the NCAA to do the right thing. They couldn't do it upon themselves, knowing that this is a multi-billion-dollar industry, especially in college football. And it took them having a court decision to now finally pay players. It blew my mind. It blew my mind, and I've always been that of inequality, and I've always been that of branding, and the fact that it took this long and all those years. I mean, heck, when DJ played, think about all those players that could have been paid out and should have been paid out for what they did, Richard. And now to see this, it really it's awesome, and I'm glad it's happening. But it's also like, yeah, it's good, but it should have happened a long time ago. So we'll see if this is the solution they're looking for. We'll talk about it more extensively as we learn more about this. Again, it is just now, it's still going through. So we'll see how it pans out, Richard. But I think this is a big decision. It could change the college sports landscape. And we thought NIL did, and it did. And now they're trying to find a way to put a cap on the NIL and make it fair for everyone. They think this decision is going to be it. Minnesota Timberwolves. I said last week, Richard, I picked Minnesota. So did you. I mean, when you beat the defending champions, it's hard not to say that you're going to be the favorite to win it all. But what I've seen from Luka and Kyrie, and every one of these games have been close, Minnesota has led in all 4 games until the last 5 minutes of the game. So 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter of each of the first 4 games, Minnesota had led at 1 point and they ended up losing. Why? Because you have to have closers. You got to have the Kobe Bryants, the Michael Jordans, the guys that are going to put the game away when it's on the line. And that is what we're seeing right now, Richard, from Luka Doncic and Kyrie. You not only have the one of the best closers in Kyrie in the history of the NBA. He just never got his credit because of off the court issues. But then you got Luka, who I think is the best closer in the NBA right now. So you got the two best closers in the NBA on the same team. This is why they're up 3-0. The defense has been lights out. And as great as Kyrie and Kyrie, and Luka Doncic have been, Richard, Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford have been the reason they're up 3-0. Their defense, catching off lobs, they're the perfect centers to play with ball handlers and ball-dominant guards like Luka and Kyrie. You got Derek Jones III, who I thought was just a dunk contest winner, is now a guy's giving you 10, 12 points a game, locking down defense, flying. Last night's that dunk attempt from the alley-oop from Luka. Oh, my God. I got flew out of the air. You talking about see a man fly, as Kevin Harlan said. He was flying. And P.J. Washington has been one of the best 3-and-D guys in the playoffs. I know they lost last night. Again, game come down to the wire, and shots that Dallas had been hitting the previous 3 games were not falling last night, because if they did, Dallas would have swept. They had open looks. But Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns, for all the criticism they've gotten, and, everybody anointed Anthony Edwards the best player of the game, and Lucas says, hold on, not even close. You're not going to skip over me. It's Nikola Jokic and me. But Edwards last night, you saw how aggressive he was. That pull-up jump shot that put them up by 5 at the end of the game. It was like 45 seconds left. It was 103-100. He comes off a screen and pulls up for about 21 feet, right about 2 or 3 feet in front of the three-point line, and cans the jumper. That did remind me of Kobe. That did. That was a Kobe Bryant special. Put the game, I remember the Suns, 2010 Western Conference Finals. He hits that, picked up his dribble, hit a couple pump fakes, and Grant, at the time, I can't think of his name now.
Grant Hill?
Yes. God, Richard, what am I doing? Grant Hill had a hand in his face, and he still knocked it down to win the game, put the game on ice. That's kind of what Anthony Edwards did. And Karl Anthony Towns, I don't think he really changed his game. I think he still played because everybody was like, bring him in the paint. He's shooting 13% from 3. He still shot 3s. He just didn't miss them this time. But, man, he does some of the dumbest things I've ever seen from a defender. Every one of those fouls were stupid fouls. You could control them. They weren't good fouls either. There are good fouls within a game that you can be, all right, that's a good foul. Foul Rudy Gobert. Send him to the line instead of giving him an open dunk. That sometimes can be a good foul. Karl Anthony Towns didn't have that. Anthony Edwards fouling Luka on that 3. I mean, you're just seeing a young team, man. And that's it. And they're having growing pains. I think Minnesota does win Game 5. I find it hard to believe that Dallas was going to sweep them. And in the back of my head, I thought if Minnesota gets Game 4, I think they're going to win Game 5, and Dallas wins in 6. Makes it a little bit more competitive. And I think every one of these games have been close. It's not like they've been blowouts, and Dallas is head and shoulders above, better than them. They just got 2 better closers. But Edwards, he was the better closer last night. I was impressed. And I'm going to give Karl Anthony Towns his flowers because he was poop. Everybody called and said that they should trade him. Excuse me. And the guy came through and delivered and keeps Minnesota's season alive, Richard. What'd you learn about the Timberwolves last night?
Well, I learned about the Timberwolves. If you're trying to sweep a team, don't let them win one game, because now you got Game 5 in Minnesota. And anything can happen if they could just steal Game 6. Game 7 is back in Minnesota. I see a scenario where Dallas wins in 6, but I would not be shocked if Minnesota wins the next 3 and it gets to a Game 7.
You think that's going to happen kind of like last year, Miami-Boston?
Possibly, but I just don't see. No team has ever came back from a 3-0 deficit in basketball. We've seen it in hockey and we've seen it in baseball. We have not seen it in basketball yet. Can the Minnesota Timberwolves make history? Probably not, but like you mentioned, these two teams play very close. All the breaks can go in Minnesota's way, and if there's a team to do it, I know they're young, and Dallas has got the experience. They got better closers. That's probably why I don't think Minnesota's going to do it, because Dallas has better closers. But yeah, this has been a very even series. And for the basketball fan, we don't want. I'm glad that Dallas didn't sweep. We do not want to wait 8 days for the NBA Finals. If they can at least get it to a game 6, it plays on Saturday. That's still a little bit of time off. I think game 7 is actually would be on Tuesday. So they would only get a day off from the NBA Finals. I mean, that's what the basketball fans want, is for this series to extend.
Yeah, and here's the thing, too. June 6th, I know why they did it, because they think if the series goes 7, we need to plan ahead for that. But they got to have something in there where if Dallas would have swept Minnesota last night, at least start the NBA Finals on a Sunday then. What, you have to wait till next Thursday? That's over a week, Richard. That's ridiculous to wait that long. I mean, this is not like the Super Bowl where you need 2-week buildup. You need to start it immediately, is what I think with the NBA Finals. But you're right. At least it got extended to a Thursday. So now if Dallas does win in 5, then we're talking only 7 days instead of 10. If Minnesota does win on Thursday, game 6 would be on Saturday, and then I'm okay with it. Now we're 4 or 5 days away. Gives Dallas some rest. Boston is the real winner right now because they give Porzingis extra time so he could come back healthy, and they're going to need him no matter if they play Minnesota or Dallas. They got to have Porzingis to win the NBA championship. And I guess we'll go from Minnesota, Dallas, who again, a great series. And I will say, even though Dallas up 3-1, every one of these games have been competitive, and I've thoroughly enjoyed watching. Last thought, I'm going to give credit to Micah Nori and Chris Finch. I would have started Naz Reid over Karl Anthony Towns last night, Richard. I don't know if I would have played Anthony Towns that much. I probably played him 15, 20 minutes. They didn't listen to me, and Karl Anthony Towns had 25 points and 5 rebounds. And the guy was 4 or 5 from 3, 9 of 13 from the field. Hey, that's why they're getting paid the big bucks, and I don't know anything, because there's no way I would have started Karl Anthony Towns, because I thought Naz Reid was a better defender. He had been making more shots, and I think if you give him more opportunities, the guy would have put up more numbers and better numbers than Towns did. But hey, they left him in. They rolled the dice with him, and their superstar, their second in command, came up with a big win. Any final thoughts on this? I got Minnesota winning Thursday. I think it's going to go 6. I got Dallas winning on Saturday. What do you got, Richard?
Well, I really wish this would be an appropriate time for me to give a hot sports take, but I like going into the history books. I remember when my Sharks were up 3-0 and lost to the Kings in 7, and then 2004, the Yankees were up 3-0 on the Red Sox, and Kevin Millar said, don't let us win tonight, because then you got Petey, then Schilling, and then anything can happen in a Game 7. I think that Anthony Edwards is he's got some swagger.
You think that he's Millar?
I think he's pulling a Kevin Millar here. Don't let us win tonight. Dallas should have swept, because now this is going to be a long series.
All right. Well, I'm all for it, because every one of these games have been entertaining. But I think, me personally, now watching it, I know I picked Minnesota, but from a standpoint of who I want to win, I love to see Kyrie back in Boston, because you know what the storylines are going to be. You know how vicious those Boston fans are. And I would love nothing more than Kyrie to go there and shut them up, because I cannot stand Boston fans. They're the worst, and I do not want them winning a championship. I would cheer for Minnesota or Dallas. I just can't stand Boston. So we'll see, Richard, what happens with that.
Thrift, I do want to say, and I got to find out if the Dallas Stars actually play in American Airlines Arena. The logistic nightmare at the Dallas Stars and the Dallas Mavericks are both in their championships.
Well, that's a good nightmare to have, Richard, have 2 of your teams.
Can you imagine every night putting down the ice and then putting down the hardwood?
And I want to say this about the Boston Celtics now that we transition there, Richard. They swept Indiana, and 3 of the 4 games were competitive. Halliburton doesn't get hurt. I think this goes at least 6. I'm take nothing away from Indiana. I think they're still young, and I think they're going to be a team to reckon with next year in the Eastern Conference. But the Boston Celtics go 12-2 in this playoff run. The fact they even lost 2 games blows my mind, because I think they should have won undefeated and not lost a game. They played a Miami team without Jimmy Butler. They beat a Cleveland team that didn't have Donovan the last 2 games of the series. And then they beat a Indiana team that didn't have Tyrese Halliburton. I mean, I've never seen this where every single series had an injury. It can't believe it. And people make fun of that Warriors team back in 2015. Remember, they played the Rockets in the conference final. Should have been the Clippers. This Clippers and Spurs knocked each other out. So the Warriors had to go from the Pelicans to an okay Grizzlies team and then beat a overrated Rockets team. People are like, well, they didn't have to play the two best teams in the Western Conference that whole year, which was the Spurs and Clippers. Excuse me. But even then, the Grizzlies had their full roster. So did the Rockets and the Pelicans. Not what the Celtics have had to face. And I honestly, as great as Tatum was, Brown's great. Derek White and Drew Holiday, I think they're the best complementary guards in the league. They block shots. They always make the right pass. They can give you 15 to 20 a night. They're going to guard the best perimeter player on the other team. I mean, this team is loaded. And if you put Porzingis on it, I think they got the most talented team in the NBA. And my God, I love him because he was a Hawk. But Al Horford doesn't age. Guy's still putting up buckets, Richard, at 38 years old. I mean, I thought he was done 2 years ago when he had that magical run that helped Boston get to the finals. Remember, he had some series, I think game one, he hit like 6 3-pointers in that game. That guy put up 15 a game or close to it in that NBA finals. I was like, well, he's 36. That's got to be it. And now at 38, he's still starting playing close to 40 minutes. He's a Hall of Famer, in my opinion, not because of his stats, and I know he's not a big-time all-star, because of his impact on the teams he played with. He had played for the greatest Hawks team in their history and in the 60-win team. He has been an integral part in this run for the Celtics that make the finals and the conference finals. He's been on every single one of those teams, Richard. The year he didn't play, never mind, 1920. He wasn't on that team, but he was on the 16-17, 17-18 team. He was on the 2021 team. 21-22 team. And then, of course, last year and then this year, that's 5 conference finals and now 2 NBA finals. And he's been a huge part. Don't tell me otherwise. I mean, that guy's great. And if Porzingis comes back healthy, but it's just something about Tatum. Brown's willing to. He just doesn't have the talent of Tatum, but he wants to take the big shots. Tatum in the biggest moments, he sometimes falters. You saw they gave the conference final MVP to Brown, not because Brown had better stats. Tatum had 30 and 10, averaged 30 and 10 in the series, shot 46% from the field. It was Brown's wanting the ball and taking over in the clutch moments that made him MVP. But the thing is, you're telling me Brown and Tatum versus Luka and Kyrie, yeah, they're long, athletic, and they got White, and they have the roster to be able to compete with both Minnesota and Dallas. They're the only Eastern Conference team that can have a roster to compete with them. But I don't know. This is something about those guys, Richard. Until I see it, I'm always going to bet the other person. Even if it's Anthony Edwards at 22 and both of them have more experience, I would trust him with the ball than I would Tatum or Brown. Is that sad? Do you agree with that statement? And talk about Boston's pretty credible run. They dominated, as they should have. They didn't play anyone. And I don't know how much that set them up to be successful in the NBA Finals.
Boston had the breaks all season. They had the best record, which means whoever they play in the finals, they're going to get home court. But this team had so much pressure to win, especially with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, who's been together for 8 years. You got to give credit to the general manager, Brad Stevens, for getting a Kristaps Porzingis, a Derek White in a trade, getting rid of Romeo Langford. He comes over from the Spurs. Getting rid of a very popular player in Marcus Smart. He was your aggressive D guy that was always in the face, but they ended up getting Drew Holiday. A lot of people thought that Drew Holiday was just getting up there in age. He has been the X factor when it comes to getting big-time steals, and he's been a lockdown defender. And they've completely changed their identity, getting rid of Grant Williams and Robert Williams. And I've been impressed with what the Celtics have done, but you're right, Thrift. They have not played anybody at full strength. And I just think that whoever they play, whether it's Minnesota or Dallas, more than likely it's going to be Dallas. You got to think that either Dallas or Minnesota is going to be the favorite.
As they should be. Gafford, Lively, all these guys you can throw at Porzingis and Horford. I think both of them are going to tire those guys out, and hopefully Porzingis can. I want everyone to be healthy when they face off against each other, but that playoff run didn't teach me anything about this Boston team. Absolutely nothing. So I'll learn, I guess, when they play in the NBA Finals. If they're able to win the NBA Finals, I'd put them as a great team that won a good NBA championship. I wouldn't put them as one of the all-time best teams. I know numbers-wise, it says with 64 wins and everything they've done, they're one of the top teams in NBA history. I can't put them there yet, even if they win it, just because of who they had to beat in the Eastern Conference, which is bad. But that's not their fault. So Boston in the NBA Finals, that's what everybody wanted. Nobody wanted to see the Pacers. Everybody wants to see Boston. And I'm hoping it's Boston-Dallas, because then Porzingis facing his old team in Dallas, who gave up on him. Kyrie and, Boston, how much bad blood there is there. Whew! I cannot wait. I'm hoping that's what we get. But, hey, Minnesota and Anthony Edwards, as you said, don't let them win the next game, because if we get a Game 6, all the pressure's on Dallas, because Game 7's at Minnesota. So these next two are crucial for Dallas. And I know they really wanted to end it in Game 4, because you give any team like Minnesota momentum, they could come through. They really can. And then we'll see. There's a reason why people thought they were the favorite heading into this series before they went down 3-0. All right, last thing we're going to end on, Richard, is Atlanta Braves lose Ronald Acuna Jr. He had not had a good year, Richard, batting .254, home runs, obviously nowhere near the pace he was on last year, but he could have turned it around. Now, this is the second time in 3 years, and it's a different knee. He's torn an ACL, and you got to start thinking, and it gone for the entire season. He's injury prone. Now, you have him already under contract. I'm not saying you trade him. I'm not talking bad about him. I know people talk about his effort and everything else. The guy is a phenomenal player. You keep him on your roster. But last time this happened, the Braves won a World Series. Now, if you're cheering that Ronald Acuna got hurt, that means World Series. That could have been an anomaly that happened 2 years ago. And Alex Anthopoulos is going to have to work wonders. He's going to have to find – they replace Acuna's production with Jock Peterson, Eddie Rosario, and Jorge Soler. Is he going to do something like that this year? I know he's got Duvall, but Duvall is batting under 200 right now. I don't know if they're going to – Tyler Redmond thinks they're going to go out and get someone, and I trust him more than anybody. But to lose your number one starter in Spencer Strider and your best player in Acuna, I mean, I only think there's only a few organizations, the Dodgers, maybe the Orioles, that can overcome losing a player and pitcher of that caliber and still be competitive in the playoffs, just because how great the Braves are. I went to the Braves game for my brother's birthday on Monday, Richard, and Charlie Morton, hot take alert, retire. The guy is, every time I watch him, and I know he's 3-3 now. He was 3-2 going in that game, like a 3.33 ERA. Now he's 3-3 with a over 4 ERA. I'm not a big believer in him. And I know you need him as a fifth starter. You got to have someone in rotation, but he's going to be playing playoff minutes. He's almost 40 years old, man. I get rid of him. Go get someone else. And now because you lost Strider, you're going to rely on him even more? No. I feel like you need to get another pitcher. Obviously, we're losing Strider. That was the main thing a few weeks ago. And now you got to find production for Acuna. So if Anthopoulos is able to pull this off, and the Braves right now are 10 games above 500, and they are so far ahead of everyone else in the wild card. They're 5 games behind the Phillies. I don't know if they're going to catch the Phillies because the Phillies tear they're on and losing Acuna and Strider. But I think it's very realistic they can make the wild card, Richard. I mean, they're 5 games above everybody else, 4 games above everybody else. So I think they're fine in that aspect. But if they can make a deep playoff run, and Anthopoulos does it again, you got to start putting him in there as one of the greatest GMs of all time, because I put him up there with Theo Epstein and others. This guy, Every single move he makes seems like it's a golden move. And that's what all Braves fans are hoping, that it could be the Anthopoulos touch. But sometimes you swing and miss when you make these trades, Richard, and he's almost batting 100. I mean, batting 1,000 when it comes to these trades that work out for the Braves. Hopefully that continues, but he may whiff on one this year. And the Braves may not pan out. Heck, they may not make the playoffs or may not, make it past the wild card round. But just a sad day to see Acuna go down. I hate it for him. I hate it for the organization, the fans, because this guy was on it. If he continued his career, was going to be an all-time great. And now these injuries, you wonder how big of a setback this is going to be for him.
Yeah, this kind of reminds me like when Ken Griffey Jr. went to the Reds. There was just a lot of what ifs. He was very injury prone. But Ronald Acuna Jr. is a lot younger than Ken Griffey, and he's in the prime of his career. You have to look at, this has just been a terrible injury, but 2 ACLs in the last 3 years, and Ronald Acuna Jr. is now injury prone. I mean, I hate to say that. Hopefully he can recover from this. He'll have his surgery. He'll be ready for 2025, and he'll be back and better than ever. And he is the future of the Braves. This is somebody, I know that, they gave him the big contract, but you need to keep him in the lineup because not only he's the most popular Braves player, he's the most popular player in baseball. And he really just drives the turnstile when it comes to like the best baseball players in the game today. You got to put up Ronald Acuna Jr. He's up there. He's definitely a top 5. A lot of people say he's the best. I mean, as far as a 5-tool player doing everything. I mean, first player in Major League Baseball history to hit 40 home runs and steal 70 bases. I mean, incredible. And we wish him a speedy recovery, and he'll be back next season.
I would say for sure one of the more exciting players in Major League Baseball. That's why everybody wants to tune in to watch him. But I think there's only a few organizations I may mention that can lose both those guys and still think they have a chance to win the World Series. And that's where the Braves are, especially because they did it 2 years ago when they lost Acuna. They didn't have Soroka and able to make it all the way to and win the World Series. They had to have an historic performance from Eddie Rosario in the NLCS. Jorge Soler hitting 2 bombs in the World Series. I mean, these guys were great. Okay. And that's what you're going to have to expect from a trade target. That's hard to get. I mean, I feel like that's not something you expect to happen when you go out and trade for the guys to get that Acuna production, but we'll see. And like I said, most organizations in baseball, you lose your best player and your number 1 pitcher, you're probably thinking for next year. And that's not Anthopoulos and the Braves. And we're lucky as a Braves fan base that we have an organization that is ran as well as it is that can overcome stuff like this. And we're hoping it can again. Remember last time when they lost Acuna, they were like under 500. Now everyone else in the division was terrible. So they would have, finished 88-74 and make it to 88-73 and make it to the playoffs and win the division. This year, obviously, the Philadelphia Phillies are not going to have that. But they are 10 games above 500, so they're in a better spot than they were last time Acuna got injured. So we'll see how it plays out. We'll talk with Tyler Redmond next week about what he thinks for potential targets to keep the Atlanta Braves hopes alive to win a World Series. Well, we've had a lot of fun today, Richard, from Talking the Lions. Thank you to Brandon Swobel, Chris Gates, Damian Daniels, Marcus Brooks, all those guys that came on our show. We did a live show on the field last week at the Civic Center, and then we broadcasted the game. It was nice to have you in the booth, Richard, place very familiar with being the Lions play-by-play guy in the past and the Rapids voice. So it's good to have you back in the booth. We'll have you back here for the championship game, so that's going to be fun. Make sure to subscribe and like us on Facebook. We'll see you again on Sunday. So our schedule coming up, we got a Sunday show. We're going to do kind of like a 1-year anniversary show. If it's not Sunday, it'll be Monday. And next week, we're going to be hitting show after show and doing interviews. And in the next couple of weeks, we'll be doing some Summer League basketball games, some 7-on-7 football games, and even baseball if we can find some in between. So make sure to like us, keep up with us. Got a great summer in store. And then, heck, before you know it, football season's almost here, Richard. And we're going to be dropping our preseason rankings. Our ratings are going to be next year. I know everybody loved our ratings this year, Richard. We're going to take it to a whole nother level next year. We're going to rank these teams. And every time we call a game, especially if they face off against each other, we're putting the rankings next to them because we're going to take this as like it's the College Football Playoff Committee, like it's the AP Top 25. Why can't we do that like ESPN and put a ranking in front of them? That's what we're going to do because it's Georgia Alabama Sports Live. From Richard Holdridge, I'm Thrift Barringer saying thank you so much. We hope you have a great rest of your week, and we will see you next time on the Georgia Alabama Sports Live show. Good night, everybody.
Thank you for watching the Georgia Alabama Sports Live show presented by Glenn Smith Chevrolet and GMC. You're ready to smile.